Hi, Happy New Year. It's Barbara from Caring Arts. This is my first project for 2021, and despite everything that's happened this past year, it has been a great year for celestial events. Perhaps you saw the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, or some of the meteor showers, or about 2 months ago in the northern part of the Midwest, we were even able to see the aurora borealis, which doesn't happen very often. So I've decided to do a project in celebration of all that. We're going to create a very simple pastel drawing of northern lights. It's really easy to do, and you don't need much in the way of materials. You'll need a couple of pieces of black pastel paper or construction paper, works just fine. Maybe 2 pieces at least, so you can use one as a test. You'll need some extra scrap paper. Make sure you cover your table with an old tablecloth, or I use a sheet of large scrap paper. You could use newspaper because we don't want to get your nice table ruined. And then you'll need a set of pastels. Now we're using soft pastels. This set is a starter set. You can get it at Michael's or perhaps Amazon for about $6. And there's 36 colors. And they're small pieces, so it's a good starter set. And then you'll also need some black Sharpie markers. I use a couple different sizes, but you can get away with one just fine point. That'll work well. I also use a fat one and an ultra fine. I have those on hand just in case, but you can use just one. You'll need some white, either craft or acrylic or tempera or poster paint. Just white is all you need, and I'll show you how we're going to make use of that. And then you'll also need a very small brush or perhaps an old toothbrush. Either one of those will work fine. You'll need a small cup, and you might need a little bit of water. I use these little med cups sometimes if I'm only using 1 or 2 colors of paint. Those work great. You'll probably also want some paper towel and maybe some wipes to clean off your hands because they will get a little messy. I also like to use these kneaded erasers. I think you can get these for about $1 in the craft shop. They're not critical, but this is one of my favorite tools actually, and it works really nicely with pastel. And then if possible, you'll need either some spray fixative, which I use a lot because I do a lot with pastels. But if you don't have that, you can get away with just some aerosol spray hairspray, which will work just fine. And I'll show you how we're going to use that in a few minutes. So we're ready to get started. You need to pull out a sheet of black construction paper or pastel paper, and then you also need to grab just this particular palette of pastels. You need your turquoise, greens, blues. You could have a light and a dark blue, a couple of purples, and possibly a white. And that's the color palette we're going to use. And then it's very simple. We're going to mostly be working in the middle of the paper. And you just start to put down blocks of color. So make sure you get a good selection of them down. So maybe some light purple, some dark purple, and then just place it in various locations on the paper. And as you start to blend them together, you can see what's working, and you can always make adjustments to those. But we're going to keep all that pretty much towards the center of the paper, going all the way across. And you can have some black spaces or not. As you begin to blend them, we can adjust, and you can kind of see how that's going. But these are the colors you want to use, and you just want to get a variety of areas down on the paper. You can use a little white if you like, here and there. I use white judiciously. I don't use a lot of it. I think I like the light blue better. But the light colors do tend to blend a little better than the darker colors. But you really need both. So you just want to get a selection of all those colors onto the paper. And then as we blend, we'll see exactly where we need to adjust. So to blend them, you just really start blending them into each other, just using your finger. But you also want to, in addition to going across and blending them together this way, you also want to get some movement going up and down. And you want those streaks of color going up and down, because those are kind of critical to really make it look like Northern Lights. So you're going to blend in both directions and just start to get it really blended. And it's fine to have some black spaces, but we want to keep the bottom part of the paper fairly black because we're going to actually put some trees in silhouette into that area. But these streaks, if you've ever seen photos of Northern Lights, you always get these streaks of light, and those are very important. And you just get those by pulling the color both down and up, in addition to blending across. You just want to get them really well blended. And then you can always add more color here and there wherever you feel you need it. You can add perhaps more purple, maybe a little stronger turquoise in here. So you can just adjust to make the color a little more intense wherever you feel you need it. But we want it blended really well together, and we want it to be a nice, soft, hazy, smoky feeling. I'm gonna add a little more light blue down here. Every version is going to look a little different. Just depends on where you decide to put the color. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And if you want some dark areas, you can actually use a clean finger to take some away here and there. You can also use your kneaded eraser and make those streaks a little more prominent by erasing down into those color areas, and it'll give you more prominent streaks. Just depends on what you feel works for you. So once you feel like you've got a nice selection of color here, then the next thing we need to do is to fix it. Right now, it's still pretty soft and I can still blend it pretty well, but we want to make it so that it's a little less blendable. We want to fix it so it doesn't smear. So in order to do that, we're going to take our spray fix or hairspray. If you don't have spray fixative, you can use some aerosol hairspray. And I usually like to do this outside or near an open window. So I'm going to take it over there and do a very light coat from about 2 to 3 feet up. Very light, very quick. Let it dry for a few minutes, and then another one, and then we'll come back and take a look and see how that's looking. So I've got my drying sprayed, and I've done 2 very light coats. Now you can see the spray left a little bit of texture, some very faint dots. I don't really mind those, but if you decide you don't like them and you want to get rid of them, you know, you can just wipe over again. There's still enough pastel chalk on there that you could still soften that up a little bit. So just take your finger over it and blend again, and it will soften up that texture. And then if you wanted to add more color, this would be a time to do that. You can still do that at this point. But I'm pretty happy with this. So the next step is going to be to add some stars. Now, in order to add some stars, I'm going to move this for a moment. We need to put some white paint, and you only need a little bit, really, into a cup. I often use little med cups if I'm just using one color of paint. I've got acrylic craft paint here, and it's pretty thick, and we need to thin that down a little bit. So I'm gonna just add a little bit of water. If you're using poster paint or temper paint, it's probably going to be the right consistency right out of the bottle. But this is a little bit thick, so I'm going to thin this down. It needs to be kind of a creamy consistency, and it's always a good idea to do a test. So I'm going to grab another sheet of black paper here just to do a test for how this looks. And this is one of my favorite techniques for creating either stars or snow, and that's to just take a small brush and dip it in the paint and kind of tap it off a little, and then just tap onto the paper, and you'll get what looks like stars. Now there's another way to do this that will give you a slightly different appearance, and that's to use an old toothbrush. Now this is going to be a little bit different because it's going to look more like the Milky Way as opposed to individual stars here and there. So it depends on what kind of a look you want, but if you use this, you're going to get a more broad pattern of stars. Kind of a lot of little stars closer together to give you an idea of what that looks like. Yeah, more like that. So it's a little lighter and less obvious. I personally, for this particular project, I'm going to use the little brush. So I'm going to get my drawing back in place here, and we're going to create a row of trees in silhouette down at the bottom, and we don't want stars on top of those. So I'm going to cover up the very bottom section of the paper so I don't get stars where I'm going to put my trees. And then I'm going to take my white paint, tap it off a little bit, and get my stars going. I really like the way that looks. And you can have as many stars as you want. It's really up to you. You can decide when enough is enough, but I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to let that dry, and then we're going to start adding our trees at the bottom. So I think this is pretty dry, and we can start adding our trees. Now I have a selection of a couple of different sizes of Sharpie marker here. I've got the regular fine point, I've got an ultra fine, and I've got a thick one. I'm not sure I'm going to use them all, but I'm going to start with the regular point. And what we're going to do is create a kind of a forest down at the bottom, and we're going to keep this pretty small because we want that sense of a huge expansive sky. If you've ever gone out and looked at the stars when it's a beautiful dark night and felt really insignificant, that's the feel we're going for here. So right along the bottom, I'm just going to draw kind of a line, trees. And then from there, in this right-hand corner, I'm going to start to create what looks like some trees. And some are going to be larger than others, but I'm going to give like a trunk and just give a sense of a kind of a narrow pine forest with branches coming off that main trunk. And some are going to be, they don't have to be really defined because these are really just a silhouette. And some are going to be bigger than others because we want them to look like some are far away and some are close. So in between, we'll put some that are smaller that look like they're a little bit farther away, and then some that are bigger that look like they're closer. And you can actually use your ultrafine if you want to make more detail in these, but they can be pretty vague, really, because you're just going to give a sense of this forest. So again, we want it to look like a dense pine forest, where it's a large forest. Some trees are close and some are far away. And then as we get farther to the left, they're going to start to get smaller because we want them to look like they're going off into the distance. So they will get smaller and then just kind of disappear. Just give a little sense of them, really. And you can add as many as you like. But then, you know, as they start to disappear, then we're going to want to fill in this whole bottom part. Now you can use the side of the regular Sharpie, but I think I find it a little more convenient to use a fat one. So I'm going to take my fat Sharpie and just color in that whole bottom part. And then let it, you know, blend right into the trees. So we're just going to do that all the way across. And once we've got our forest and hills all colored in, we're basically done. It's just that simple. It's hard to go wrong.